Hi, everyone. Dr. Elizabeth Bonet here. Dr. Liz, welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast. Before we jump in, please note that the podcast is not mental health treatment, nor should it replace mental health treatment. If you need psychotherapy or hypnotherapy, please seek treatment from a trained professional. I do hypnosis all over the world, so please feel free to contact me through my website, drlizhypnosis.com, DRLIZ hypnosis.com. Hi, everyone. Dr. Liz here. We are well into the holiday season, pretty much around the world right now. And we're having some cooler weather here in South Florida. Cooler for me as it goes down into like high 50s at night and stays in the low 70s during the day. It really is beautiful. These are the months when you feel lucky to live in Florida, honestly. Not so much the summer months, but definitely the winter months. So it's been beautiful here. And I just want to let you know that my heart reaches out to all of you who are struggling this year, who have perhaps lost someone due to COVID or any other disease or accident or however that happens. I know some people are alone and celebrated Thanksgiving alone in the U.S. It's a big holiday that involves family usually for us. So I just want you to know that I hold you in my meditations in the mornings that I do and in my thoughts. Today's episode is quite unusual. I don't typically do my own work on the podcast live. And this isn't live, quote unquote, but it is not edited. So I did not go through and edit any of it out. I felt like it was a really powerful session. Originally, a friend was scheduled to do this work with Dr. Hahn, and something came up where she couldn't make it. And so at the last minute, I said, well, I'll do the work with you. And he said, wonderful. He was interviewed on episode 184. So just a couple of weeks ago, really, on the podcast. His episode is called Life-Centered Healing with Dr. Andy Hahn. He is a licensed clinical psychologist and is the creator and trainer of this really beautiful healing system. He practices around the world, and his office is in Massachusetts in the United States. You can see more about him at his website, lifecenteredtherapy.com. Now, this session gets pretty emotional, and typically I don't record video of my interviews. I have an audio-only podcast. The audio posts to YouTube, but it is simply audio. But this episode is quite different than any other I have ever aired. So I also put the video up on YouTube. And if you want to see it there, then please go take a look if you'd prefer to listen to it that way with visuals going on. I do start crying, and so there are pauses here and crying noises, all that kinds of stuff. So sometimes that's a little bit easier if you have the visuals to go with it. Not always, but sometimes. I do want to let you know there's talk of a child dying. I wanted to let you know that before you get too far into it. Now, I did want to give you an update since it's been several weeks since I recorded this episode with Dr. Hahn. I definitely felt a shift in how I support my children and how I support their happiness. There's more of a sense of freedom, I would say. So I wanted to just give you that update before we jump right into the work that I did with Dr. Hahn. So let's go ahead and do that now. Peace. So Dr. Hahn, welcome back to the Hypnotize Me podcast.
Thanks, Elizabeth. It's such a joy to be back with you. And knowing what we're going to do, I want to just thank you in advance for giving everybody a gift, because when you are willing to put yourself out there in this way, hopefully you get something. But my guess is whatever it is we work with, it won't be just for you. It will be for a lot more people than just you.
Absolutely. Hopefully. Yes. I think the process, from what I know of it from our first interview, that one's in the show notes for people. and they can go back and listen to it to get some background here. But it's just so fascinating to me. And it felt like a huge internal shift in my own therapeutic process, meaning like, let me pause here and see how I work and see what's a good fit for me. So, can you tell people briefly who haven't heard that first episode? Can you tell people briefly what your system is?
Sure. So our framework, it's called life-centered therapy. It's a whole framework. And it's based on a few simple premises. So I can talk about why I believe people come to therapy, why I believe therapy, what I think therapy is, and how it works. And I can do that in about a minute. I think everybody comes to therapy for the same reason. We call it trauma. Or to put it differently, it's just something that can't be handled and integrated. That's all. And I think when you can't handle and integrate something, you go from being someone who's having an experience to someone who's identified with a person who is living the experience over and over and over again. Or to put it differently, you lose all perspective and you just relive the trauma. You're no longer in the here and now. So that's what
Mhm.
I think. And I think that's why people suffer. So I think why people suffer and trauma are the same thing. If you could take care of all your trauma, you would never suffer. You might feel physical pain, but you'd never suffer because you could just say yes to everything. And we
Mm.
have exemplars of those. They're called Christ or Buddha or somebody like that. And they can just say yes to everything. They're not anxious. They're not judgmental. They're not comparative. They just say yes. That's it.
True.
So what's
Hmm.
therapy? It's simply mastering what couldn't be handled and integrated. That's all it is. And it's very easy to say how that happens, which is that as soon as something can't be handled and integrated, in that moment, a sensation is born. Just like Elizabeth is born in a moment, the sensation is born in the moment. And then what happens is because we're not aware of it, we identify with the sensation and not the one who's witnessing the sensation or holding the sensation. So you stop remembering and you start to live echoes of it. So
Mm.
you could say, what is therapy? It's an invitation to remembering who you truly are and not who you believe you are once you've had a trauma. That's what therapy is, okay?
Hmm.
Okay, so then all we have to do, if all you did was every time, so it's very interesting, every sensation you have that's a discomfort, I would say, is a living being who's come to share a story. And every time you have any kind of anxiety, judgmentalism, or anything, anytime you've been traumatized where you have a symptom, there's going to be an exact associated sensation that is the exact equivalent of what it is that couldn't be handled or integrated. And it's a living being. It is not a part. Just like, unless we want to say
Okay.
that Elizabeth is a part.
Uh huh.
You want to say, if you want to call yourself a part, then we could call all these sensations part. But really what you could say is there's an enormous community of beings, and the ones that haven't been able to handle something are all here, and they are kind of at various times running the show. All right,
Okay.
that's the basic premise. Then we only have to do three things. We have to find out what your real intention is, because you might be coming in with a symptom of the intention and not the intention itself. And in the
Hmm.
last example, we gave a very brief example. If you had a panic attack, and if you had a panic attack and it was because 10 years ago you were in a war and a bomb went off, it's a fairly direct relationship between, you know, a car
Yeah.
motorcycle backfiring and the fact that you were in the war. And then that would be a direct thing because your reaction to the loud sounds really would be kind of a direct link to this thing. But we said, let's suppose 100 years ago, however we want to understand that, somebody was leading a group of people in World War I, and they weren't paying enough attention, and they walked them into an ambush. And they watch all these men die as bombs go off. Well, then they might come in and say, my problem is loud sounds, but we would know that was a symptom of something else, betrayal. And we might know, right, that betrayal might be the root cause of their reactions to loud sounds, their OCD, because they couldn't, they say, I don't know why, but if something goes wrong, something terrible is going to happen. It might be why they keep shooting themselves in the foot whenever they want to be a leader, because they would not want to put themselves back in a place where they would betray again. If
Hmm.
shrapnel actually hit them in the story, they might actually feel like they shot themselves in the foot, and they'd have a story where they something fell on their foot and that's why they were limping. But we would know that wasn't the problem. The problem was that that was a reliving of what happened 100 years ago. And it would look like it
Mm.
was an accident, or they would say it's fate, but really it's destiny. So they might have
Mhm.
all of these different issues all at the same time, but if you could find out what the real problem was, which is betrayal, and you could change the betrayal, and that was the only reason, you might get 10 different symptoms all transforming all at once that look like they had nothing to do with each other. Okay, so we have to
Okay.
find your true intention. That's the first thing.
Mhm.
We have to find out where it crystallized, because everything after that is just going to be the reliving of an echo. And even things that happen in this lifetime that can look horrendous, and in fact are horrendous on a whole other level, could be the reliving of something that happened in what we call a past life, or in your genealogy, and you might not know that, so you would work and work and work, and you'd get some result, but you'd say something doesn't feel like it's complete here, and it's because you'd be getting an echo. So we have to find out where it originated, and then we have to find out, whoever it is, do they need something other than just having awareness while they're witnessing and holding. So they're going to choose to become the sensation. And as soon as you choose to become it, you're the one who's doing the choosing, not the sensation anymore. You no longer identify with the sensation. You identify with the one who's choosing to experiencing it, who's witnessing it, or is mindful of it, or is holding that person, at which point you're free. Because then you'd say, I remember what happened, but it's not who I am. That's the whole deal.
Okay. Got it.
Now, there's only one problem, which is I can't ask you, because if you come in and you say I have this terrible problem, and I say, Elizabeth, how come you have this problem? If you knew the answer to that, you'd say, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't be
I wouldn't be
not with
here.
you.
Right.
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 Right. So I'm going to use a.
Although occasionally when you ask that question, people tell you.
Yes, they do, but
Right.
if they tell you, then they don't know what to do about it.
That's true. That's
Because
true. Yeah.
they may know what the problem is, but they often think they know what the problem is, but it may not be the problem, particularly if you're dealing with something from another lifetime. So they say, oh, I know what it was when I was 3. And you find out that that wasn't where it crystallized. But I'll ask. But
Okay.
I'm going to use a process called muscle testing, or kinesiology, which is
Mhm.
a way of accessing deepest wisdom. And if we were together, what I would do is I would press on your arm. And
Mhm.
what we would find is, if the answer to something was true, if you're like most people, I could literally sit on your arm, and it might fatigue, but it would stay strong. And if it wasn't true, you could use all your willpower and try to hold your arm up, and I could press very lightly with one finger, and your arm would go down. So your body becomes like a truth teller. And then we get to ask questions, and all the answers come through you. Except we have one problem here, which is that I'm outside of Boston and you're in Florida. So I can't
Uh-huh.
put my hand through the computer. So I have to muscle test myself as a surrogate. And the only way that's possible is to say something that might sound funny, which is that on the surface, you and I are different. Just like
Okay.
cells in a mystical body. We have 3 trillion cells, and all of them are different on the surface, but underneath it, there's the same template. In our case, if it's a cell, it's called the blueprint, or the template, or it's called DNA. And so what I want to say is, you and I are like mystical cells in a mystical body that is called life, and we're holographic. So that if we were a holographic plate and you broke us into trillions and trillions of pieces, each of the surface ones would be different. But the underlying picture would be a whole universe. That's an evolving universe. And all we would have to do is then tap into the template. So what I do with you, which sounds funny, is I tap into the template and I focus on the part of the template that's called, in this world, Elizabeth. And then it's like I become that quickening, that life force
Huh.
called Elizabeth, as opposed to the life force called Andy. And since I have no particular stake in it, I don't do it perfectly. So you can say, Andy, that seems off. And I'll say that's possible, because I can only do
Okay.
it perfectly if I was truly, an enlightened, realized being, which I'm not. But I do my best. And that's
Okay. Great.
okay.
I love it.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So that's, now we have the background in 10 minutes of what we do. Now, all I'm going to do is ask you one question. And I really want you to be with this. Okay. So we're just now
Okay.
going to pause. We're going to
Mhm.
pause for a second, and we're going to shift our attention even more deeply in and down. So we're just going to breathe. And as we're breathing, it's like we're not only breathing in air, we're breathing in what we might call life force. It's like we're breathing in life, or you could say the divine. And when you do that, you open to a deeper knowing, the part of you that just knows what's true. And intuitively, if there's something you need to share, then it will reveal itself that it needs to be shared. But really, what I want you to do is check with a deeper heart. And it knows the best thing we could do today. So what you want to do is just check in with this deeper heart, that voice, and we're going to say, if you could have anything you desire from this time, anything, even if you weren't sure it was possible, what would you intend to get from the time? What would you intend so you got exactly what you would desire for right now so that something would be different and theoretically, from your point of view, better for yourself, for your family, for the collective, for anything. And I'm just going to write down whatever you say. And whenever you're ready, you can just tell us what you'd like from our time.
I would like for my children to suffer less. And that's really my true intention. I mean, the question sort of comes up of like, why do they suffer so much? But really, in asking that question, my true intention is that they suffer less. Like, there's a part of me that, who cares about the why if they suffer less? Yeah.
Good. Now, I want you to take one more moment. That might be really the only thing you'd want from our time. And that, of course, is an act of grace, but not surprising. That you say, if my children suffered less, then I would have what I truly desire. But why don't you just check in and see if there's anything else or if that's really it?
Yeah. I think that's really it. Yeah.
So you gave us something interesting, which is that virtually no one, which I think is a commentary on you, when I asked them what they would desire from the time, is you're not the first person who said that, but it's very unusual that someone doesn't say something about themselves overtly, like I want to be a better mother or I want to not have anxiety. You really, what you're saying is what I really, my heart's desire is just that my children would suffer less. Now, there's a few things to say here. The first one is the reason they might be suffering might have something indirectly to do with you, at which point you could work directly on something for yourself. The second
Yeah.
thing is, of course, you carry your children within you, literally in your case, because as
Yeah.
a mother, their cells literally exist inside of you, which
Yeah.
you probably know. If you don't know, it's an amazing thing to know that, when you take the blood of women who have children, they have male DNA in it. It's because they carry literally biologically their children in it.
Yes.
So
Yeah. It's fascinating. I learned that. I don't know, during one of my pregnancies or after, who knows, early motherhood. And I thought that is amazing,
right.
right? Like, it's
From
amazing.
that point of view, you can step into what's going on with your children because you literally biologically are them. So in that case, you were doing something for them surrogately. And if it's about them
Uh-huh.
literally, we would theoretically have to ask their permission. We could ask their soul level permission, at which point it would look like you were doing a surrogate session for them, right?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
you can do surrogate sessions for people, for sure. I mean, because
Huh.
same way that I can become you, you can become them. But typically, if it's someone living, you have to ask their permission. But we can even find out if you have to ask their personal permission versus their soul level permission. And
Okay.
insofar as the reasons that they're suffering aren't about them per se, but about who they are in other lifetimes, particularly if it's genealogical, you wouldn't even have to ask because whatever it is that's affecting them would be coming down through you anyhow if it's genealogical, right? If something happened 5 generations ago on your mother's side and it came down through you and it wasn't even affecting you, and it can affect them and it can show up in them. Okay. So
Okay.
your situation is different enough that we have to say that. Okay.
Got it.
Good. Now you and I are going to become a team. And I'm going to start muscle testing. If there's anything you want to ask, you can ask also. And but I've spent my life trying to figure out what questions to ask so that you can get through a diagnostic quickly. And we'll start with your intention, and we'll see what happens. Um,
Okay.
and I think actually, sometimes I get a sense of things, and I think this might actually be very powerful. Um, So anyway, so I'm going to start muscle testing. And the way I muscle test is it's like asking my body to be a pendulum. So then I have access because I want to write. And there are a lot of ways to muscle test, but what happens is I just say, show us a yes, and my body moves. I say, show us a no. And I say, show us a yes. And then if I were to ask, which, if I was to say, my name is Andy, it will say no. If it says my name is Elizabeth, it will say yes. And now theoretically, as best I can, I'm muscle testing you, even though I'm being a surrogate for that. Okay.
Okay.
So here's how it will look. So we say, and I will explain the questions as we go along. All right.
Okay.
So the first thing we ask is, are we fully in healing presence? And it says, yes, healing presence is the aspect of soul that really helps us become whole. Are we simply balanced? That says yes also. And simply balanced means our bodies are ready to do the work. Because if you're not hydrated enough, I get mushy answers and then life gets funny and a bunch of other stuff. But our bodies,
All right.
we're hydrated, you may be something.
Yeah, I have my water here. Looks like a coffee cup, but it's
Yeah,
water.
well, there you go. It's even better. And are we fully checked in? And that says yes. And fully checked in just means that you've said everything that you need to say so you can do the work and I can be of service. That's all. So now we get to shift. And I'm going to start because we always ask the client if they know first. So I'm going to find out if you know what to do, because you might say, I need a hypnosis session. At which point I'll say, well, that's not good for our podcast, but it may be good for you. So anyway,
Right.
say, okay, so we're going to say the one we call Elizabeth, that's you. We
Mm-hmm.
know the best way to proceed and we ask you and it says no, so we're off the hook. So I'm going to find out, yes. So we're going to do healing work and we're going to do what I would call a standard balance. Is there anything better to do? Okay. So standard balance just means something's out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And all that says is one of two things is going on. Either you're suffering because your children are suffering, at which point we'd be working with you, and
Mm-hmm.
then something would be out of balance for you because you wouldn't be able to say like, I can just be with them, whatever's happening, um,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah, when you say that, occasionally I get caught in it, but usually I don't.
right,
I feel more separate from their suffering.
right. Well, I can find out, and if it's true, there are stories like there are certain kinds of fallen angel stories, for example, where an angel is supposed to just be someone who holds a space with love even when terrible things happen, but sometimes they get they get so touched by it that they want to fix the problem, and as soon as that happens they may fall through dimensions. And so we
Hmm.
could have a story like that. I've seen that story with people who are very highly evolved people, but it's sort of like they sometimes get caught up in other people suffering so much, and it's because they're reenacting something where they were supposed to be sort of unconditionally transpersonally loving and it became personal. So
Oh, interesting. Okay, that definitely happens often, not often, but occasionally. Um, Not necessarily with clients, but sometimes a story I'll hear. Sometimes it is with clients. I can think of a particular one who she lost a child and it just, you know, during session I was fine, but afterwards
yeah,
I had to really work to release that pain. Like it's not my pain,
that's not your
you know.
pain, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but interesting with my kids, it doesn't, I mean, I go into action when they tell me,
I'm not surprised.
but it's not a feeling of being in it.
Okay. Well, that may not be it, but I just wanted to tell you, like, because
Yeah.
your situation is interesting enough. So I'm going to find out who we're actually working with, okay? And find
Hmm.
out what happened and see what's going on. All right. So let's find out what we're going to do. So, do you, what we're going to call Elizabeth in this situation, do you have a highest intention and that's what we're to do? And it says yes. Are we to work theoretically, if we could, with one of your children's intentions about why they're suffering? And that says no. So there's something that's going on with you that somehow is related to your children suffering less. It's
Mm,
something that you're holding. That's
mm.
all we know so far, because it says I'm to work with you and not with them. Okay.
Okay.
And certainly we could work with them and just have you become one of them, but that's not what's going to happen. We're going to work with you.
Okay.
So that's all I know so far. So let's find out. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to find out what we're going to do. So we're going to work with you. So you have a highest intention. That's what to do, and it's going to be you as Elizabeth, as opposed to you surrogating your children or one of your children. Yes. So your highest intention. Let's find out. Your highest intention is any, some, or all of what you said, and it says it is what you said, that you want your children to suffer less. And why do they suffer so much? That's, we have to work on that. But what we know, we're going to find out what that is. So that's it out of everything. Is it worded exactly correctly? Is it a blocked intention? Is it anything other than a blocked intention? So what that says is you're carrying somehow some kind of trauma which is related to your reactions to your children's suffering, so you want them to suffer less. That's all I know so far.
Okay.
Or it'd be like saying in a story more dramatically, why are they suffering so much? It'd be more like that. There's
Hmm.
some charge on it, right? That's all I know so far. So it might be that you're watching them suffer in a worse situation and like you're helpless or something. That might be an example of what we're talking about because we know it says there's some kind of charge on this, okay? Um,
That resonates. I often feel helpless
well,
because they're sort of
yeah,
they'll bring something up. I want to get them help. They don't want the help.
right.
And I end up feeling helpless. Like, how do I help you here?
I
You
can't
know?
help you here.
Yeah.
I can't help you. There's going to be something with you not feeling. That's exactly it. You're not going to be comfortable with your helplessness and your powerlessness. There's some charge on that. So that instead of being able to say, I can be with you, somehow your helplessness, it's like your attention went back onto yourself and you weren't able to sit with your own helplessness or powerlessness in some situation. And that's somehow related to this
Mm.
muscle test unbelievably strongly when you said that. Okay.
Okay.
So let's find out. So really, that's the charge here. I want my children to suffer less. Why do they suffer so much? There's something, the part that we have to work on with you that somehow is related to their suffering is that you can't sit on some level with your own helplessness or your own powerlessness about being able to do something for them when they are suffering in some situation. Yeah, that's really strong. So thank you for that. All right, so that's it. And is that worded exactly correctly? Do we have to refine it? Do we have 100% permission? Are we done with that part? So we now know what we're going to work on. We're going to work on that you have some anxiety that's associated with my children are suffering and I can't help them suffer less. And there's this existential question, why do they suffer so much? And within it is some kind of helplessness or powerlessness or a pleading and a prayer not feeling answered or something like that. That's what we know. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we have to work with out of everything. All right, we asked source. We're going to work on it directly. We asked source. So it says you need a clue. So does it have the structure of a pattern or patterns? Yes. Are there patterns on it? So it means that your helplessness is not enough to know. We need to find something more about your helplessness.
Okay.
And it's some kind of universal theme like betrayal, like you felt betrayed or you felt like you did something and you betrayed them without meaning to, or they died and
Oh,
you couldn't stop it. So
okay.
they're saying,
This life or past? Like, I definitely feel like I betrayed them when they were little. Like, I was not the mother I wanted to be as much as I was trying.
well, maybe that, at which point it will say it's this life. And then it will tell us the problem is betrayal. And it will say that it started in this lifetime, at which point you can then again decide if you want the world to know what that was or not.
Okay.
But the good news for you is I don't think that's going to be it because it doesn't hit. All right, let's find out what the pattern is. Maybe it is a pattern betrayal. We'll find out. So we're looking for, but you need it's some kind of universal theme, a universal mythic theme like betrayal or neglect, or you can't let go or something. So let's find out what it is. It's
Okay.
made up of one. Is it standard life-centered therapy, standard form? Is it any other kind of pattern at all? So it's something in this framework. And there are three categories. I'm going to find out which one. Is it single-center? No. Is it major energetic? Yes. Is it identity? No. So what that says is you're reliving a story of some kind of theme, and the theme has made you believe things that you know aren't true. You won't let yourself feel some feeling in the context of this and be a choice about expression, and there's a boundary trauma or there's some kind of boundary violation all around whatever this theme is. That's all we've found out so far. Let's find out what the theme is. Okay, so it's in the material realms. Yes, it's in the non-material realms. So it's not a story of someone put a curse on you or your children. That'd be non-material. This is material. You'll be able to know it through your 5 senses. That's all.
Okay. Whew. Well, that's a relief. There's no curse.
Okay.
Honestly.
All right, let's find out what it is.
Yeah.
So I'll find out if it's betrayal also. I mean, maybe. Let's find out. So we get to the right answer, I'm going to go backwards, and it's only going to happen once. Split, so it's not that. Multiple, it's not that. Neglect, it's not that. Grudge, it's not that. Death wish, oh, it's a death wish. Well, wounded, it's not betrayal, it's a death wish.
Mm.
So what that says is, a death wish says that there's a part of you that's experiencing, I want to die. If it's in this lifetime, it might be because you did something so terrible when you were young that you said, I wish I were dead. like I betrayed them so badly that I wished I were dead, and you'd have a suicidal thought or something. If it's in another lifetime, it means that either you watched them die, at which point you wished you were dead, or you died in a way that you felt like you were abandoning them and you couldn't save them or something like that. So, and it's what we know about the death wish. I'm going to be a little bit more educational with you. Is we know you dissociated in it. So if you wished you were dead, it'd be like you watched them die and you couldn't do anything about it, and then you dissociated. Or if you died, you would have a thought of like, how can I die right now? My children need me, but they're going to suffer, and I won't be around for them. It's going to be a story like that.
Okay, so I'm going to pause here
Go
for
ahead.
a moment
Mhm.
and tell people this has been the theme of my life, this death wish type of thing. Okay. And I have worked on it in layers, like you talked about in the previous episode, layers and layers and layers. And I am just sort of stunned that it's coming up again. And you didn't know any of this about me before this session, like zero, zero. But it was my father died at 53,
Mhm.
and when I was 18, and he had decided to die at that age because his father did, and it took many, many years and lots of work with different types of work to um, to what I thought resolve the fact that like I'm not going to die. For many years I wanted to, like, oh, I'll get to my 50s, I'll die just like my dad.
Mhm.
And thinking I've reversed that and really believing I reversed that. But at the same time, sort of being terrified. I'm 51 next week, being terrified that I'm going to leave my kids because I don't want to. Like that as the like, no, I cannot leave them. Like I have to stay alive for them, and with them. That's yeah, it's been on my mind a lot.
Yeah, well, I can only tell you I'm getting kind of chills and goosebumps. And when you say that, there's something still stuck there. That's all I know. And we can do something with
Okay.
that. I mean, there may be more than one thing stuck. Have you ever worked either genealogically or in your karma around these things? Have you worked in your
Yeah, I've
father's?
seen a psychic once in my life,
Uh,
and
yeah, go ahead.
she was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's genealogically, honestly. It was a very brief session, and it was with someone I trusted and, highly recommended. I knew her some,
Yeah.
but she said, it's so strong on you. And FYI, you're not going to die. You need to start looking for people who are like in their 80s with their mind still working well, and, and it's not going to happen for you.
Mm.
So, and then I worked on it under hypnosis a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where did it
So,
take you?
and that felt, I'm not quite sure what you mean by genealogically, but that felt genealogically like I had
Genealogical
definitely.
would be that you went back into your bloodline on your father's side and found out the first person who died and left
No,
kids. That would
we
be
didn't do that. No.
genealogically.
Okay.
Because it's not your story then. It's someone else's story, but you're holding the story for someone else. So if your father died and his father died, then there's a likelihood that someplace something crystallized in the bloodline, which would be why you'd say, I'm going to die when I'm 53. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you'd hold
Hmm.
the story, because when something gets traumatized in the bloodline, it comes down through the bloodline and you can change the whole bloodline, but it doesn't start with you. And I'm going to find out if it started
Got it.
with you, but I'm going to be shocked if it started with you. So
Yeah.
any work you did on you when you were little or anything, I don't know, where did your hypnotic sessions take you in terms of this? Or did you just work on the experience of it without knowing where it was crystallizing?
Well, we worked on the experience of it as well as like um, getting very clear on the meaning of my life,
Mhm.
which was to help as many people as I can heal.
Yeah.
And that became very crystal clear. It wasn't ever like, it was a little murky before that. Like, I like doing this, but,
Yeah.
so am I meant to? There's a different feeling, right? And so we went in utero,
Yeah.
but not before that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, but some of it was, yeah, healing. That's what I would call it, healing that death wish. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you went in utero, that's still in this lifetime. I'll find out if
Hmm.
it's in this lifetime. And if it says it was in this lifetime, then there's still something to work on. And this lifetime starts at the moment of conception. So certainly it could be something in utero, but it could be something in your bloodline. And if it's in the bloodline, it can affect you in utero or in your karmic,
Hmm.
because I don't know what happened to you in utero, but I'll find out if that's where this thing crystallized. And if it is, we'll go back there again. Okay.
Okay.
Well, right now, all we know is whatever you said this theme is exactly it. Because the second I tune back to it, I start getting goosebumps and chills, and that usually for me is that you're exactly in the right place. All right, so so there's still a part of you that's experiencing I want to die. Now, of course, that doesn't mean necessarily you want to die.
Right.
It just means that you had a if it's you dying in the story, or if you were standing in for someone who died in the story, they would have essentially not been able to really metabolize the death. They would have dissociated around it. They would have been in their own place of helplessness or powerlessness, or a sense
Got it.
of there's nothing I can do about it, and so they would not been able to held whatever happened. So it then goes down through the generations. Okay.
Yes. And dissociate is a fantastic word for it, because for many, many years, like 20, I felt dissociated from it. Like, this is just going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't even a lot of feeling around it. It's like, that's going to happen. And it
No,
prevented me
the
from
reason it
truly living my life. Even when I'd like buy a car, I'd be like, well, I'm going to be dead at 53. So,
so
what car do I, it's crazy. But
not crazy, but what you
after I saw the psychic, it was like, oh, it was traumatic to me that I had to start living. Like, I called one of my friends afterwards and just cried and said, I have to start living now. And that was, I'm trying to think how old I was, probably 40, 42, 43, 10 years ago or so. No, shoot, I'm 51, less than 10 years ago.
Well, apparently there's a part of you that's still dissociated. Other
Okay.
would say you had handled the whole thing and it wouldn't be coming up right now. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And dissociated is exactly what you talk about. When something is too painful, when the charge gets to be up to 100, you don't feel, it's like your leg falls asleep. So it's like you talk about it matter of factly, because it's just so painful that you say, I won't let myself experience it. And at which point you go out of your body. And then you go around walking like nothing is a problem, until it gets down below 100, at which point you start having excruciating pain like you're talking about.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so we know that there's a part of you, if you're a community, right? Someone in that community, which could be you from reincarnated, or you in a bloodline, or you in utero, or somebody, because we're all these communities really of living beings, is experiencing I want to die. And it's a totally around this theme of like, my children are suffering and I can't do anything about it, or why do they have to suffer so much? And somehow it has something to do with you won't be around. That's all we know, because that's true. It's not like in the story. It's not like you watched them die like in the Holocaust or something and said like, this one, you may have one of those too, at which point you still might want to die, but then you just say, what's the point of life because they've died? That's not this one.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay.
So, all right. So we now know what you're going to work on, which is really this part of you. If you call all of you parts, you could say it's a living being and someone's there and they're experiencing like, there's something about my children suffering. And why do they have to suffer so much? And it has something to do with some part of you that couldn't manage a death and never really completed a death process. And so that whoever that is saying, I want to die and let go. They're stuck like a goat, so to speak. All right.
Yeah, super sad. It's bringing up a lot of sadness in me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's someone else's sadness that's yours, right? All right. So the next thing to do to find information about story. So we're going to find out, we need a root cause and a narrative. We need one of each. All right, it does not originate in your lifetime. I asked if it originates in a past life. Is it genealogical? It's not genealogical. Is it karmic? So that means it's not about your bloodline. It's not about your dad dying. It's like you in another lifetime where you were reincarnated. It's not your bloodline. So you could be anyone, male, female, anything, but you won't be you, and you won't be someone who's like your grandfather or your father or somebody, because it says it's not your bloodline. But whoever's sad here, it's not that. Okay.
Okay.
So it's karmic. We have to know anything more, and anything more would be it's who, what, when, where, why, how, or if you already know the story. So it would be who was involved, when it took place, where it took place, what happened, why it happened, how it happened, if you know the story. We don't need any more clues. We're going to get there through a sensation. Do we do anything to deepen, amplify, set up, or the transpersonal questions, which means you're holding it more than yourself? Any practices defined now? No. Is it fully available? So here's what I want you to do. As you're allowing this, like, I really want my children to suffer less. Why do they have to suffer so much? And it has to do with my sense of I'm helpless to stop it. And we know that it's likely that it has something to do with a traumatic death of some kind. I'm helpless, I'm powerless, and they need me, and I won't be there. And I have to stay here, but I can't stay here because I'm dead. But I'm going to stay here anyway. So I'll never let go. And the sadness, as you're allowing all that, what you are right now, all I want you to do is scan your body and tell me what you notice. It could be tears, it could be a sick feeling, it could be pain, it could be heavy. All I want you to do is scan and tell me what sensations are there as you're allowing all this, just like you are right
It's like a shaking, really, like a shaking and a fluttering in the heart.
now. Right. Now, is that the predominant thing? Or is there anything else also? Is it really where you're drawn is shaking and fluttering in heart? You teach us.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to choose to bring all your awareness and focus all your attention so much on shaking and fluttering in heart that you're going to become, your new name is shaking and fluttering in heart. You're no longer Elizabeth. You're someone else whose name right now is shaking and fluttering in heart. And we're going to say, whoever you are, shaking and fluttering in heart, you teach us. What have you come to share about this? I so want my children to suffer less. Why do they have to suffer so much? And there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm stuck here, and I know something about your dying, but you want to stay so much that it's like you never really let yourself fully die. So you're also experiencing there's nothing I can do because I can be here, but I'm dead. So I want to let go. Now, as you're allowing that, just you teach us, where is this beginning? And what's happening to you? What have you come to share about all of this? And you just be shaking, fluttering heart, and you might become a being whose heart is shaking and fluttering, or images might come to you like a movie, or just knowings like you're like reading a novel. All I want you to do, shaking, just share with us, talk with us about this. What's happening?
So the image that comes up is actually a woman who's kneeling.
Yep.
And it's I can't really get an image of the children, but it's like they're in front of her
That's right.
somehow.
That's
And
wrong.
but the image I keep getting is of like their little spirits floating up
Yep.
and her saying it's okay to let go. They're gonna live in joy.
Okay, stay with that. So it may not have been like a Holocaust, but it may be that you've lost and just stay with it.
Yeah. And then just an image of her heart, her fluttering heart connected to theirs.
Yeah, that's definitely right. There's,
And tears, she's crying.
that's right. That's right. Mm. Yeah.
It's odd. I get somewhat of a reversal. Almost like I know the question was like, what does she have to share with us?
Mm-hmm.
But
You know.
she's so sad. And I get this image of me actually holding her, saying it's okay to let go.
That's right.
Her children are younger. They're not my children.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other like odd part is that she's in gray. It's like a black and white image, almost like this grayscale image. But the children's souls and spirits are like this, yellowish, whitish light. Yeah. And so is her heart. Yeah.
Got the whole story. Well, she shared what she had to share. It's interesting because there's another story too. We're in the right place. Okay, we got the whole story. Let's find out. So what you were doing for her was a practice that she needed in order to heal. Let's see if that's complete. Source level, do you know? No. Will I find out? Yes. There's something more. You're doing the right thing, but there's something more she needs, and you will know what it is. I don't know what it is, but you know what it is. So there's just more she needs from you. And if you tune in, you'll know what it is.
The image that comes is just she doesn't want to leave.
That's right.
That spot.
That's right.
It's almost it's almost like I see us in conversation, but I can't really hear the conversation, But it's like going back and forth where I say to her, you can stay here as long as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I almost feel like she was led away before. That is a feeling that she was led away somehow before she was ready to let go, and no one let her stay as long as she wanted to.
That's right. That's a really strong.
Yeah.
That explains something. Yeah. Okay. So as you're sharing that with her, you can be here as long as you want, and I'm here with you. See if there's anything else.
It just strikes me as a similar feeling after my father died and we were at the gravesite, and I didn't want to leave. Mm-hmm. It was raining and cold, and he died in December, and I was in Texas, not Florida. And but I had to at some point. Everybody was leaving. That was the feeling. I had to. Yeah. But I didn't want to. Yeah. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same feeling.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good thing she has you.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So find out what happens when you just share with her. You can stay here as long as you need to. I'm here with you. See if there's anything else.
Then there's a sense of peace.
Yeah.
Not that she's not still sad and in grief, but there's a sense of peace. It's almost like you see it spreading through her body, like this white light that spreads through her body.
Yeah.
A calmness, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
A comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. I want you to do one thing for me, okay? Because you just changed all of history, which is going to be good news for everybody. I want you to find out what happened to her when you weren't there for her and she didn't have this practice with you. Find out what happened to her afterwards when the story played out the way that it did originally. Just find out.
Oh, I think she lived in grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dissociated, like you said, like just sort of a zombie walking around the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Not truly living, like feeling
Mm-hmm.
dead inside herself.
Yeah.
And living, I think, I just see her, like these images of her living in her suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not being able to let it go or have moments of joy or happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a funny way, it is that she couldn't save them. So,
Yeah.
well, I think you just did a lot of good for her and a lot of good for you. Because my guess is what happened is that she probably died the way she was living and probably never let herself fully complete that either. But we don't have to do that anymore because you just helped her.
Okay.
It's a really good thing. But let's find out. You get the whole story. Let's see. Should we ask her if there's anything else? Or can I find out? Are there any more practices? So you just did a practice with her, you could say. She shared her story, and then you did something that helped heal the story by just being with her in the way that she needed to be with, and probably the way you need to be with. Although I guess if you go back to him when you're 13, I feel different.
Mm-hmm.
That was really beautiful. All right, do we have to take any more connections? No. Are there any lessons to learn? Are there any of the final questions to make sure you really got this and can live differently, which would be more at peace, actually? Is it fully affirmed? You were here for health and health. Anything more for this one, for the one in the story, for the children, and for all before we leave this work? No. So is the work on this complete? Yes. Is it done? Is there anything else? Is our work complete for now? We're done for now. So take a moment and just be with yourself. And if there's anything you want to say about how you are, or what's touched you, or how you're feeling now compared to an hour ago, or if you have any reflections, the floor is yours. And if you just want to sit and let it integrate, that's great too. You just tell us. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead. What's your question?
Sort of the thinking brain kicking in versus the feeling brain, right?
Oh,
And it's like, okay, so there's a part of me that says, okay, now I just have to wait and see how this changes things, right? My question is, all right, by relieving her suffering, let's say rewriting that story, then will my children suffer less?
I think they'll suffer less, and I think you'll suffer less about your helplessness and powerlessness, which paradoxically will make them suffer less. Because you could say that on one level, right? Because we didn't go back, and we don't have to go back and find out what happened to those children. But let's just say, insofar as they were suffering and you were trying to heal this story on a soul level, of course, your children would say, well, of course, we'll be very happy to be characters in your play, helping you to remember this, right?
Yeah.
So of course they'll do something that looks like they're going to die on you or something, or they're going to suffer and there's nothing you can do about it. But
oh, got it. Oh, so it's like the contract is fulfilled.
This contract is fulfilled. So as soon as that's fulfilled, your children say, oh, we don't have to play out those two kids that are going to like suffer and die, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Oh my God. It makes me so happy. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
So what I do is I would just say, oh my God, are my children suffering less? Magically. Now, I'm not saying all of their suffering. They have their own karma.
Of course. Yeah, they have their own karma.
We just did a little bit to help a whole line of people like let go of like we're going to be held on to here because the kids are going to suffer and the mother's going to go like walk around like a zombie.
Yes. Fantastic.
That's what I'd say. But you'll
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
All you want to say, but you just check. Spend 30 seconds every night and for the next few weeks to see if you're feeling like it's not as big a deal, and I'm not going to watch them like suffer, and there's nothing I can do about it, and they're going to end up like God knows what. and just see if it's tough or not. And just take the null hypothesis and assume nothing will change, and just see. Okay,
Okay,
good.
great. Wonderful.
Now see if there's anything more you want to ask or share or anything before we say goodbye for now about this.
Oh, just how grateful I am. Thank you so much. Like, yeah, this is I feel like it was another layer
Yeah.
peeled back.
Well,
And
yeah. My
yeah,
intuition is there's a lot of mothers right now who are watching terrible things happen to their children,
yeah,
and there's nothing much they can do about it.
right.
And I think you just helped all of them a little bit.
Hopefully. Absolutely.
Yeah. See?
All right. So, okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
Good idea.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Liz here. I know this was quite an emotional episode. So if you are looking to work with Dr. Hahn or get some support around anything it brought up in you, please feel free to reach out to him through his website, lifecenteredtherapy.com, or also feel free to reach out to me, Dr. Liz at drlizhypnosis.com. I wish for you the same depth of healing that I experienced. Peace. I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. Remember that you can get free hypnosis downloads over at my website, drlizhypnosis.com, drlizhypnosis.com. I work all over the world doing hypnosis. So if you're interested in working with me, please schedule a free consultation over at my website, and we'll see what your goals are and if I can be of service to you in helping you reach them. Finally, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast or tell a friend. That way, more and more people learn about the power of hypnosis. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. Peace.